Hello, good people, and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History. Signed, sealed, remembered, Guitar Man Jerry Reed. And today, we're going to dive back into the story about the making of Guitar Man. We had to rush through it a little bit yesterday, and I want to give it the time to breathe that it deserves, and so that we can hear as much of it as we can possibly find in the historical record. That's what we're going to do today. Hi, Gun. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. We're going to start with a song. And this song's going to be the song about the way that Donna Presley saw Elvis at this point in time in 1967 on the Circle G Ranch, where he's left to go to Nashville and to Hollywood in order to record these songs. This Guitar Man that we're going to talk about today. And this song is He Gave Us Everything. And I'll see you on the other side.
Oh, 17, snow on the ground, Circle G, love all around. He bought that ranch, opened the gate, said come on in, let's celebrate. Tractor pulling through the snow, laughter rising, spirits glow. Both behind, wives and men, family fun again and again. He wasn't just a star in lights, he was the warmth in winter nights. Kindness wrapped in velvet flame, a heart that never played the fame. He gave us joy, he gave us grace, a piano song in a quiet place. From a jack to a king, in the moonlight ring, he gave us love, he gave us wings. Circle G, where the angels sing. He gave us everything. Riding horses, lakes so still, bridge and cross on the quiet hill. Barbecue smoke, stories told, moments more precious than gold. He'd ask me who I'm dating now, what I dream, what I'll allow. He cared like kin, not just a name. He lived for love, not for acclaim. He wasn't just a voice on stage, he was the soul behind the page. A man who'd sing to heal your day and laugh the midnight blues away. He gave us joy, he gave us grace, a piano song in a quiet place. From a jack to a king, in the moonlight ring, he gave us love, he gave us grace. Circle G, where the angels sing. He gave us everything. A shadow in the night, famous face, but heart so bright. Couldn't walk the street like you and me, so we built a world where we were free. He gave us joy, he gave us grace, a piano song in a quiet place. From a jack to a king, in the moonlight ring, he gave us love, he gave us way. Gave us everything. Yes, he gave us everything.
thank you all for gathering here at Hillbilly Cat History, where we remember together and listen for the echoes. And today we're going to hear from Jerry Reed, the guitar man himself. And what we know so far is that on August 22nd, 1967, after Elvis had finished Speedway, well, exactly when he finished Speedway, the movie, and after his wedding, which had been on May 1st, that Elvis cancels, for some unknown reason, a recording session that was scheduled to be in Los Angeles. Now, people who collect Elvis records today and who know things about sound engineering that I don't know anything about, they say that the facilities in Los Angeles were inferior to what was available in Nashville. So I think it's possible that Elvis simply canceled so that he could use the superior facilities in Nashville. And Elvis and Priscilla and some of the other people that were with him, they went to Las Vegas for a couple of days. And then after a few days in Las Vegas, they flew back to Memphis. But on September 1st, Elvis flew to Nashville and he cut some songs, including High Heel Sneakers. But that apparently wasn't enough for Elvis, that he wanted to record more songs. So it feels to me like he didn't cancel August 22nd because he didn't feel like recording or he didn't want to record. It has to have something to do, I think, with either an event that was equal in emotional complexity and stature to Richard Davis when he hit a gentleman with a car, because that's what Peter Goralnik believed happened at that time. But we've seen that was really in 1963 that event occurred. So there was either an event like that, or Elvis simply wanted to use the better equipment that would have been available elsewhere, that Los Angeles was not his preferred recording environment. So on September 9th, Joe Esposito and Elvis, they flew to Nashville. And what we believe is that they left Priscilla in Bel Air, California. So at some point, they had left Memphis and gone to California. But again, Elvis is flying away from California to get to Nashville, I think because there's better recording equipment there. And Marion says that she loves Jerry Reed's guitar playing on Guitar Man. And Gunn says that she didn't know it was Jerry Reed that was playing the guitar on that track. And Marion says that she didn't know for 20 years who played that guitar. Hi, Pat. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. Well, we're going to hear from Jerry Reed himself today about playing on that song, about how he creates his unique sound. So on September 10th, that's when they actually do the recording. And the purpose of Elvis doing these recordings, he's got to pick up some bonus songs for the Clambake soundtrack, of which Guitar Man becomes one. It's released on that soundtrack. But he also wants to create some new songs. So we've been following Elvis since late 66 through this series. Really focusing on 1967. But we know that he recorded How Great Thou Art in 1966. That appears to be the last time that he really did creative recording. recording that he wanted to do because he wanted to do it. He's done other recording, and he's maybe slipped a song in here or there, but mostly it was for the soundtracks. It was recording that had to be done in order to complete the movies. And that a lot of those songs he wasn't very happy with. That these were not songs that he would have chosen himself to perform if there wasn't a film vehicle attached to it and contracts that weren't going to let him out of it. Now, he could have gotten some of those songs changed or what have you, but again, they're under timeline crunches, and that effort, whatever would have had to have been done, wasn't done. So he stuck with those songs in the soundtrack, but now he's going to record what he really wants to record. And so for 1967, I think we're seeing an energy here that we haven't seen before. I think maybe he had a lot of stress that fell off of his shoulders when he got married. That there'd been a massive amount of stress moving up to the marriage, and that Circle G had been maybe an outlet for a lot of that stress. And that involved spending a massive amount of money. Although we looked at it and it seems like it was a manageable amount of money, although it was very large. But it's not like Elvis is out all that money. A lot of it's invested into the ranch, and he's going to get it back out. It's going to be a little while, but the ranch is going to pay off for itself. Now, some of the money's gone because he gave it away as gifts, in the form of gifts, and the trucks and the trailers and some of the other items. But mostly he's going to come out okay out of this deal. So it seems like that was a lot of stress reduction at that time. He was letting off steam or trying to reduce his stress, and then he gets married. And I think that's got to reduce a massive amount of stress, because for years, this marriage with Priscilla has been looming. And now it's over. And not only is it over, he's about to become a father. Because Priscilla's pregnant at this time. And so he's got to be very happy about that. Hi, Luann. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. Happy coffee. And so I think that this need to get into the recording studio, because it's got to be a need because he's driving it. And it's not just that he decided all of a sudden that he wants to go in. We're going to learn he'd already planned this, that he'd been thinking about it. So I've got to believe that this is some of that energy that was being kind of diverted into the Circle G, because he had all of these other pressing things on his mind, had 2 movies coming up, and then he gets injured with the concussion. I mean, that's took out 2 weeks right there. That must have been hard for him to recover from as well, just in the sense that he would have realized he's not invulnerable. But now we're in September, and he's got a need to get these recordings done. Hi, David. Nice to see you. Thanks for coming. And so Elvis has decided he's going to go into the studio, and one of the songs that he wants to do is Guitar Man. And he's already instructed the Colonel that he wants to do Guitar Man. And the Colonel and Tom Diskin, who is the Colonel's right-hand man, they have communicated this to Hill and Range, who handles Elvis's publishing. And when Elvis records a song, they make a deal on the publishing, and basically Elvis gets half of what the publishing is. That's half of what the author, the songwriter, would normally make from the song. Elvis, from this point forward with the publishing, is going to get half. And that's not just if Elvis records it, it's anybody else who records it after that. Elvis will get a piece of that because he's getting that publishing piece. It's a really smart business move, but a lot of people in the industry did not like it. Although many of the songwriters, they went ahead and went for it. Dolly Parton did not, and we're going to learn that Jerry Reed wasn't very fond of it either. And Luann says, why did he sell the Circle G? Well, he hasn't sold it yet. That's still coming up. But I think this is part of it, that the Circle G was an outlet for stress relief in some ways, as well as the building of this dream that he had, the beginning of his family. But now all of that has culminated. It's happened. And he's cycling back, or spiraling back is the way I normally think about it. He's spiraling back to his intense need to create music through his interpretation of songs in the recording studio, where he started his career. He wants to get back in there and do that again. Hi, Lorna. Thank you for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And so he's in the studio in Nashville. Elvis is under the impression that all the songs that he's got listed that they're going to record, that everything is set from a business end. Elvis doesn't handle that business end. Colonel does. But what's happened is Freddie over at Hill and Range, well, he hasn't quite got around to it. And normally it wouldn't be a big deal. Elvis would record this, and then behind the scenes, Freddie would approach the artist and he'd say, Elvis already recorded it. All we got to do is make the deal, and we're releasing it, and the money's going to roll in. And that's a strong incentive to an artist who probably needs some money to go ahead and do that. One of these songwriters who is struggling because they're living kind of paycheck to paycheck, which is whenever these songs play or they're able to sell one. So they'll go for that kind of deal. That's not quite the position Jerry's in, though. And unbeknownst to Freddie Bienstock, Jerry's going to end up here at the recording session, and that's going to be kind of embarrassing. And Luann says that Elvis's happiest time is the best thing to him. I wish that she was more family oriented, to have a big family, but in that case it was not. Yeah, I think this was a very happy time while they were expecting Lisa Marie. Yeah, Elvis really did want to be a father. I mean, so this was a big deal for him. And I think he's expressing that through this need to record. And Billy Smith, well, he got to go to the recording session too. And Billy Smith is Elvis's cousin. And Elvis and Billy were tight for a long time. And during this period in the 60s, they were pretty tight. Now, Billy will leave for a while and come back later in the 70s. But at this moment, he pretty much goes everywhere with Elvis. And Billy says, Guitar Man was a Jerry Reed song. Jerry had put it out himself just a couple of months before, and it started his singing career. Well, when Elvis was doing it in the studio, the musicians couldn't really get the groove, particularly the guitar sound, which was double important on this song. They had 3 guitar players on that session. Scotty Moore. Now, isn't that interesting? First guitar player that Billy Smith mentions is Scotty Moore. And yes, that is Scotty Moore from the Blue Moon Boys, one of the original backers of Elvis. There were three guys that started it. It was Elvis, Scotty Moore, and Bill Black. So Scotty is here in Nashville because Scotty's in the music industry here in Nashville. And Elvis has brought Scotty into this recording session, which is another indication that Elvis is trying to get back to the very beginning of his career. That energy that he had when he made those first recordings at Memphis Recording Studio. He's spiraled all the way back to the beginning where it all began, and he could tap into that vast resource of power that he had at that moment. Because in that moment, he and Scotty and Bill, they made magic together. So he's brought Scotty back in. They're going to make that magic again. And Billy says they had three guitar players on that session: Scotty Moore, Harold Bradley, and Chip Young. But Elvis wasn't satisfied. He told somebody, call Jerry Reed. Maybe he could tell one of these guys how to get that sound. So Elvis, he's heard Jerry Reed's version, and that's why he wants to record this, and he is in love with the way the guitar is played. But three great guitar players, Scotty Moore, Harold Bradley, and Chip Young, none of these guys is able to replicate that sound. And Marion says that Elvis was such a brilliant father. And that's true. Like you truly could see the love that he had for Lisa Marie. Now, Peter Guralnick, who's he's basically the number one Elvis historian alive today. He says that Jerry Reed was a genuine individualist, even in Nashville terms. 30 years old, like Felton Jarvis, a native of Atlanta, which is in Georgia in the United States, and a graduate of the Bill Lowry School of Music. He had been writing songs and making records off and on for over 10 years. Jerry got session work through Chet Atkins after moving to Nashville in 1962, who admired his work. Chet Atkins is like the greatest guitar player of all time, some would argue, especially in studio terms. So if Chet Atkins admires you, that's massive praise. Peter says that Jerry did not really enjoy any recording success until signing with RCA in 1965. So that was a couple of years before this. And RCA is the same group that publishes Elvis's music. So now they're under the same publisher. Peter says that Guitar Man, which had reached number 53 in the country field just a few months earlier, was his first record even to chart. So Guitar Man is Jerry's first big hit. It's what's brought him to attention, and not just any attention. Elvis has noticed him, but also the entire nation. So this is a big time in Jerry Reed's life. And Luann says that she wishes Priscilla had a family-oriented nature to give Elvis a son or even more children. Pat says that Elvis loved Lisa Marie with his whole heart. And Gunn says that Lisa Marie loved Elvis with his whole heart, with her whole heart. And Marion says that Jerry Reed came in and he showed all these guys how to adjust the strings. And Pat says that it's sad that Elvis wasn't able to see Lisa grow up, that he would have been proud of her. And back here in 1967, in the recording studio, Jerry Reed, he says, I never thought of myself as a Nashville recording musician because I was a stylist. I only play my stuff. And I wasn't worth a darn playing all that other stuff. See, I had my own tuning. So it's like Marion said, he's got his own tuning. We can see Jerry here with on the front of his album, A Good Woman's Love. Now this is in the 70s, so it's a little bit later. He doesn't have an album yet out in 1967. Just that singles hit, I think. I don't think he's got an album out yet. And Jerry says, Elvis's producer was an old friend of mine, Felton Jarvis from Atlanta. We all kind of grew up down there with Bill Lowry. And of course, Bill Lowry, that's the man that Peter just told us was running the school that they went to, the School of Music. So that's Jerry indicating to us that he and Felton Jarvis, they both went to the same school of music. Jerry says that they were trying to record Guitar Man and they couldn't make it feel like my record. And Marion says that someone said Jerry appeared in fisherman's clothes and not even shaved, and that she guesses he didn't want to miss the chance to meet Elvis. And Pat says that she loved Jerry Reed and Smokey and the Bandit. I'm going to take just a second to make a small aside story about Smokey and the Bandit, which had Burt Reynolds, and he drove this car. I'm thinking that was the one, right, where he drove the Trans Am. I think it was a Trans Am that was a Chevy product, and Chevy had the president of Chevy. They called him Burt Reynolds and they said, we've never had as many car sales as we have since you did this movie. And that I am so impressed, I'm going to give you a free car. And he sends him the same car that was in the movie, in the same model. And he tells Burt he's going to give him a brand new one every year. So Burt gets one every year for several years. And he said it was just a gift from them, and he wasn't ever really expecting it because he didn't have a contract or a deal for it. But one year he didn't get it. So he called up Chevy and he spoke to the president, only it's a different guy. And Burt says, I didn't get the car this year. And the president says, oh, is that so? And Burt says, yeah, the previous president had told me that I'd be getting a new car every year for my life, for a lifetime. And the president of Chevy said, yeah, that's true. The president's lifetime. And unfortunately, he's now gone. And therefore, there's no more cars. And I just found that to be a hilarious story that Burt tells. You can find it out there somewhere on YouTube. I didn't tell it quite right, but I hope that the humor came through. And Luann says, is that the guy in Smokey and the Bandit? Funny that she's seen him but never knew his name. Yeah, he's one of the guys. He's not Bert, but he's in there. And Jerry drove the 18-wheeler, Pat says. And Mary says 18 wheels on one vehicle. That's a name we use here in the United States for a very large truck. We call it a semi-truck a lot of times, but it's the kind of truck that brings your cargo. But they do have 18 wheels here in the United States between the trailer and the tractor. That's what you call the front of the vehicle, the tractor. But all together, they've got 18 wheels. And in the 70s, trucking was extremely popular. Around the time that this Jerry Reed album is from. And you can see this great belt buckle that Jerry Reed is wearing. It's almost an Elvis belt buckle. Pat says it's called a tractor trailer. That's it, Pat. Tractor trailer. Or if you're a fan of toys like the Transformers, it's Optimus Prime. And Jerry Reed says they were trying to record Guitar Man and they couldn't make it feel like my record. And an interviewer once asked Jerry, were you a fan of Elvis Presley? And Jerry said, are you kidding? I grew up in Atlanta in the 1950s. In 55, I'm playing sock hops and Elvis and Jerry Lee and Chuck Berry and Fats Domino. Those are your rock and rollers. So Jerry was a Elvis fan from the very beginning, and he was out there imitating Elvis from the very beginning. So if he had been contacted by Freddie Beanstalk, he probably would have been head over heels to make a deal for Elvis to record his music. Like, I'm sure he would have really been into that. And Jerry Reed says they were trying to get it recorded, and Elvis said, that ain't right. I want this to sound like Reed's record. And he says, I forgot if it was Pete Drake or Charlie McCoy or Chip Young. One of those musicians said, well, these guitar players in here are playing with straight picks, and, you know, Reed plays with his fingers. And Jerry said, Felton Jarvis told Elvis, well, now listen, if you want it to sound like Reed's record, this record's all about that guitar. These guys here ain't got a clue because Reed's a finger picker. They play with a straight pick. They don't know what Reed's doing. If you want it to sound like that, you're going to have to get Reed in here to play. You got to get the claw in here. So apparently Jerry Reed had a nickname in the studio, or maybe elsewhere, of the Claw, because he would finger pick his guitar, which would make his hand look like a claw while he clawed at the strings of the guitar. And Billy Smith says, Jerry was on a fishing trip, but somebody found him. And Billy, this is what Billy thinks Jerry said when he was asked, how do you play this guitar lick? That Jerry said, better yet, I'll come on over there. Because Jerry's interested because it's Elvis. And Luann's asking, did Jerry Reed have an interview? The reporter was asking Jerry questions about Elvis. He did. Yeah, he's got a few interviews out there that you can find. And I've kind of mushed some of them together to get the full story for us. So Billy's told us that Jerry's out there on a fishing trip. Marion's told us that she thinks that he shows up, Jerry Reed shows up and he's wearing a fishing outfit. And Jerry himself says, I was on the Clint River carp fishing. Yeah, carp fishing. Now, a carp is a kind of a fish. Probably not the greatest kind of fish because Jerry's not very excited about fishing for carp. But he says, we were out there carp fishing. That's about all we caught. So it's not so much that he was fishing for carp, but that's all that he was able to catch. And Jerry says, my daughter didn't care as long as it pulled on the line. So Jerry's out there on the lake with his daughter and they're fishing and they're not catching fish that Jerry's very excited about, but his daughter is. And so he's spending this time with his family out on the lake, enjoying, the fruits of his labors, his money that's come in from Guitar Man. It's allowed him this bit of time with his family. And Pat says that she thinks Burt Reynolds and Jerry Reed had an amazing friendship on Smokey and the Bandit. That's interesting. I should look into that, right? And Marion says that in an interview, Jerry Reed said he was so impressed how handsome Elvis was, and he told him so. And you can see in this picture on the album cover that Jerry has Elvis sideburns, Elvis 70s sideburns, right? Like, those are definitely copied right off of Elvis. And so Jerry, he's out there on the lake, and Billy Smith, he says, so Jerry Reed played on the session, and he got that hot wired sound on the track. So Billy's indicating that once Jerry got there, he was able to capture that sound that Elvis wanted. Jerry himself says, Felton Jarvis said, we're down here cutting your song Guitar Man with Elvis. It ain't coming off. We want you to come down here and play guitar on it. And I said, well, it'll take me a while to get there. And I was there in about 12 and a half minutes. So Jerry, very excited that he's going to get to play on this track with Elvis, he hurries on into the studio. Now in this picture, we can see Jerry Reed. He's over at the right. And over at the far left, that's Felton Jarvis. So he's appeared a lot in this story. He's Elvis's producer. He's the guy that is in charge of this recording session. And he's the one that's called Jerry, is Jerry's old friend from Atlanta, and saying, hey, you want to come in here and play guitar on this track for Elvis? Pat says that Jerry Reed said that if he wasn't a man, he'd make a pass at Elvis. That's funny, Pat. And Luann says that cracks her up too when Jerry says that. And Marion points out Jerry Reed's not the only man who said that. But I know that the only man that George Klein ever slept with, Elvis's friend from high school, was Elvis. At least that's the way Klein puts it in his book. That there was one night at Elvis's house on Audubon Drive, and he had to spend the night. There weren't any more beds, and Elvis said, will you just sleep in this bed here with me? And George says that's the only time in his life he ever slept in bed with another man. So he might have lived out that dream a little bit of Jerry's and those other men who might have made a pass at him. Now, this man in the middle, he is famous, but I have no idea who he is. I'm sure he's a famous recording artist. but I can't place him. So if you know who he is, please let me know. When you run this through Google, it says this is a picture of Elvis Presley and Glenn Campbell and it gives you, I think Roy Orbison is who it thinks is in the middle. That's obviously not Roy Orbison, just as it's not Glenn Campbell or Elvis Presley. Jerry Reed says, so I walk in there to the recording session right off the lake. I hadn't shaved in about 3 or 4 days. I smelt like a carp. I don't remember what I was wearing, but it was pretty stinky. So Marion is correct that Jerry walked in right off of the lake, and he says that he was stunk like a carp, so he smelled like a fish, and that his clothes were just as stinky as he was. And he says, I hooked up that electric gut string, tuned the B string up a whole tone, and I toned the low E string down a whole tone, so I could bar straight across. And as soon as we hit the intro, you could see Elvis's eyes light up. He knew we had it. It was just a jamming session. So Jerry is describing exactly what he did to the guitar, which allowed him to use one finger to make a chord across all the strings at once. And that allowed him to move up and down the neck kind of fast, change the sound of some of the chords that would normally be used, gave it a distinct sound. And this was something that Jerry had thought up in order to make his own distinctive sound. And Marion says that's not Roy Orbison at all. That's right. That's not Roy. And Jerry, Peter Goralnik says, Jerry Reed was a whirlwind of energy with a ready supply of infectious charm and irrepressible enthusiasm. He was never bashful about his talent. So Jerry, I think, has an energy that is something like Elvis, but he's not quite as humble as Elvis. He's a little more brash. Now, he's probably a little humble here in front of Elvis, but typically he's a little brash. And Jerry Reed says, I thought I was going to be so darn nervous I couldn't play. But it was right the opposite. I got pumped. And then Elvis got pumped. And the more he got pumped up, the more I did. It was like a snowball effect. Tell you the truth, I was on cloud 9. So these moments with Elvis as they're recording, they're some of the greatest moments of Jerry's life. That they're in the zone, as people would say today. And Jerry says, I never told anybody this, but Elvis cut Guitar Man a lot faster than I did. I think he got so excited, and I got so excited, we made it a hoedown. It's the only time I ever recorded with him. I guess we had a cut in 3 or 4 takes. So Jerry remembers that this was fast, that they just did a few takes and it was all over, and that it was a lot faster than when he ground it out the first time on his own, and that they were both in sync together. I think that's what Jerry's telling us. And Jerry says that once Elvis got the spirit, things really began to happen. When the guitars and the rhythm sounded right, I guess the guitar lick kind of reminded him of What I Say, another song. And he just sort of started testifying at the end. That was how it happened. One of those rare moments in your life you never forget. So Jerry remembers this as a moment he can never forget, something that was very important to him. And he remembers that it took 3 or 4 tries in order to get the final cut. It actually took them 11 takes to perfect the song. So they did this 11 times. But in Jerry's memory, it was only like 3 or 4. It was fast. It was very quick. And I think that's a great lesson and in how the emotional impact of an event affects a person's memory. He doesn't remember any of what may have been waiting around or trying to do the same thing over and over. He just remembers maybe 3 or 4 takes and it was over. It was quick. But it actually took 11 takes. Which that's got to be over an hour, maybe an hour and a half. Maybe longer. But to Jerry, it was quick. And Jerry says, I remember Pete Drake sitting beside me on steel guitar. He said, sing another song. I said, hey man, Elvis cut guitar, man. That's good enough for me. And then Elvis said, you got another song? I said, I got one called U.S. Mail. You want to hear that? Elvis wound up cutting 4 of my songs. So Jerry only plays with Elvis on this one song. Well, he plays on another one, we're going to find out. But he only plays in this one session. But Elvis records 4 of his songs. At least according to Jerry. Prior to Elvis ever recording this song in the studio, with or without Jerry Reed, it had been the responsibility of Freddie Beanstalk of Hill and Range to have cleared the publishing rights and the percentages of Guitar Man for this Billy Strange session. Billy Strange is the producer of the session. I think he's actually on the board that with all the like the controls and the equipment, the soundboard, and Felton Jarvis is here. He's in charge of all the logistics of production. He's Elvis's producer, but Billy is producing this within the studio, is my understanding of how this works. Not an expert at how this actually works. So if you've got a different understanding and you know more about Billy Strange, let me know. You can put it in the chat or in the comments. And while you're there, make sure you hit the like button, that you are subscribed. We need more subscriptions all the time. So be sure that you're telling everyone that you know that loves Elvis Presley all about Hillbilly Cat history, so that we can all gather here together to hear these great forgotten stories about Elvis. Although this isn't exactly a forgotten one, but I'm hoping I'm getting some details in here that you've never heard before. So Freddie was supposed to have taken care of this business stuff. But Freddie had some major changes in his publishing business on his mind during this period. And for whatever reason, despite consistent and constant communication from Colonel Parker and Tom Diskin, Freddie never approached Jerry Reed to secure the publishing rights. As we discussed earlier, if Jerry had been at the session, it wouldn't have been a big deal. Freddie would have got it worked out on the back end. But now Jerry is here, and he's in person, and uh, he's not aware. He's thinking he's getting 100% of the publishing because that's the way it works. He's the songwriter, and he's pretty happy Elvis has cut this song. So Freddie Beanstalk, he recruits Lamar Fike, who's also here at the session, and Lamar Fike is a friend of Elvis's. He's been with Elvis since 1957, but he met Elvis in like 1954, 1955, depending on which Lamar story you listen to. So he's known Elvis a long time. He lives around Nashville. I think that's why he's here. And Freddie uses Lamar, and they together try to negotiate with Jerry Reed in the middle of this recording session so that they can kind of lock this all up. This is, I'm thinking, a not bright move on their part. That they should have just waited until after the session and then worked it out when Elvis wasn't around, and not during the middle of a recording session. This is terrible business. Like, as a business practice, this is not good business. And so now they've got Jerry kind of off by himself, and Scotty Moore, who's also there, says they got Jerry off in a corner, but he wouldn't sell. And Jerry Reed says, I remember saying, why didn't you tell me this before I come here? I could have saved you all a lot of effort. And I started to get emotional. I said, you done wasted Elvis's time. You done wasted all these musicians' time and RCA's time. I'm not going to give you my soul. So in the middle of this recording session, Freddie Beanstalk, who hasn't handled his responsibilities, decides now is the moment to try to make up for that lack of previous effort. And for some reason, Lamar feels it's appropriate for him to get involved. He's, I believe, employed by Hill and Range at this point. But I have to go back and look at that. But he had some kind of business relationship with Hill and Range. And these two knuckleheads have decided that in the middle of an artist recording session, when Jerry and Elvis need to be at their artistic peaks, that this would be the appropriate time to try to talk Jerry into giving up a lot of money. Although he may potentially earn a lot of money. But it's going to be a hard sell either way, and this is not the right time. It's like when you go to a timeshare, and they're trying to sell you the timeshare, and you're in the pool. That's not when they make the sales pitch. They have you enjoy the amenities of the place first, and then they bring you into a private room, and then they try to get you to buy the timeshare, right? It's all about the timing of these events, and this is terrible timing. And Jerry, his recollection of his conversation with Freddie goes like this. I know how important it is to have an Elvis Presley cut. I mean, I'm thrilled to death. And we can work it out. We can work out a split on this record because I do appreciate the importance of it and what it means. But you're not going to get any of the copyright on this song. And Freddie says, you know, it will be an important copyright. And Jerry says, I understand that, Mr. Beanstalk. But Jerry wasn't really listening because he was intent that he was not going to give up any of his publishing rights. And Marion says that they destroyed the beautiful mood they were all in. Exactly, Marion. This was not appropriate to do in this setting. And Jerry says, Mr. Beanstalk, I'll put it to you this way. Well, wait, I forgot. Freddie says to Jerry, He says, the record is not going to come out if we can't work out some kind of an arrangement here. So Freddie, he uses a scare tactic in his negotiation process. You're not going to make any money if we don't get this done. Elvis isn't going to want to publish this. Well, Jerry knows Elvis wants to publish it. He just recorded it with the band, and they had this beautiful time together. Jerry is in a very strong negotiating position here. Yet another reason this was a foolish move on Freddie and Lamar's part. And Jerry says, Mr. Beanstalk, I'll put it to you this way. You don't need the money. Elvis don't need the money, and I'm making more money than I can spend right now. So why don't we just forget we ever recorded this darn song? And then Jerry went back in and tried to record another song with Elvis. And eventually, Jerry is angry, and he gets up and he storms out. And so I doubt he was doing a great job on that other song. And of course, Elvis isn't very happy about this. But that's a story for the next episode. When we return, we'll still be inside this recording session. And we'll finish it off and we'll move forward from there. And we'll see how this all works out. And Jerry Reed will write again, just like this album cover. And until then, I'm going to leave you guys with a song, like I always do. And this will be my new song, He Carried Light. And it's about Elvis and some of the things I think he was trying to do in these recording sessions, although not necessarily these particular songs. But he used some of his recording sessions to record gospel songs so he could spread the word forward. And he always had his live performances in the 70s opened with gospel. And here is He Carried Light. Thank you guys so much for being here today. Y'all keep on taking care of business.
In the margins of the pages his voice still speaks, whispers of longing, of love that seeks. These are all the notes, every thought, every prayer, a father's searching heart still breathing there. To do your will in my purpose he wrote, a bridge of devotion, a living note. Through the Bible's lines, through the books he kept, the light of his spirit forever swept. Like a bridge through the troubled night, he carried love, he carried light. Every word, every song, every plea was a path to unity. He showed the way and we will follow, through joy, through pain, through each tomorrow. The unseen hand, the guiding flame, love eternal in his name. Delta held the book with gold on its face, the impersonal life, his sacred place. Larry gave the gift, and Elvis was changed. New doors opened, horizons rearranged. He is within us at all times, he said. A chorus of hope where the faithful are led. Fans sent their prayers, their Bibles the song, and Elvis carried their faith along. Like a bridge through the troubled night, he carried love, he carried light. Every word, every song, every plea was a path to unity. He showed the way and we will follow, through joy, through pain, through each tomorrow. The unseen hand, the guiding flame, love eternal in his name. Show me the way and I will follow. His voice was a prayer through joy and sorrow. The road to seek and never ends. His journey became the gift of friends. From cousin to co-star, from friend to kin, the spirit he carried will sing His praises for all to hear, a song of salvation, a love sincere. Like a bridge through the troubled night, He carried love, He carried light. Every word, every song, every plea was a path to unity. He showed the way and we will follow, through joy, through pain, through each tomorrow. The unseen hand, the guiding flame, love eternal in His name. There's got to be a reason, He said, a purpose unseen, a life spirit led. And through the notes, the prayers, the song, His bridge of love still carries on.